just stealing gears. It pulls you in and doesn't let go.
Okay, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Carousel. I am Isaac Simpson, aka Disgraced Propagandist, and I am here today with a independent journalist, the man Dan Lyman behind Border Hawk News. And so Border Hawk is an independent journalistic media company that covers what else? The most important issue of our time, immigration. And so welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you. Big fan of the show and big fan of all the work that you do. It's great to be on.
Yeah, so tell us about what it's like to run a independent media company in today's world. How does this come about? How did you get involved with covering the border?
So the backstory is I'll try to keep it as interesting and not overwhelming as possible. But I've been at InfoWars for 10 years. I've been writing at InfoWars and reporting for InfoWars since 2016. And when I started there, I was covering a wide variety of topics, and I was living in Europe at the time. I was living in Iceland actually, and that was right around the time, kind of post 2014, 15, 16, the migrant crisis in Europe, and that was when millions of foreigners from Syria, from Africa, from the Middle East, just started pouring into Europe, and we started seeing the massive, tidal wave effects of all of that happening. So while I was living in Europe, I was watching this unfold, traveling the continent, and seeing the continent and the population radically transformed. And so I found myself more and more writing about immigration related issues, particularly in Europe. Um, and then shortly after that, we ended up spinning up InfoWars Europe. And InfoWars Europe was almost primarily dedicated to issues of immigration in Europe, particularly crime, because it's endless waves of crime in Europe to this day that spawned out of that migration crisis. And so I just found myself very attracted to that issue. And so um, my family background is that my parents, my mother specifically, has been very keyed in on this issue, specifically in the United States. She was a delegate for Pat Buchanan in 1992. Of course, Pat Buchanan is a legendary immigration hawk, a border hawk. And so I had that background, although I wasn't particularly interested in politics in my 20s. I was fronting a rock band at the time, and I was really checked out of politics. I will say I was never a lib, though. And so a lot of people who get red pilled or kind of come over to the right or get, keyed in on immigration issues. A lot of people have started as liberals. I never was one.
I was one. That was me.
There,
I was a libtard. But wait. What am I supposed to do? I'm raised in it. It takes a while. It takes a while to undo the brainwashing. Were you raised liberal or not? Were you not? No.
no, raised radically right wing, radically
Okay.
right
So
wing.
there you go. So you just happen to be on the right side.
Indeed,
So
indeed.
it
But
takes time to come over.
it does. I mean, and also, like, you can be even kind of a right-wing kid, but, I mean, it's a little bit different these days with social media, but back then, it's and we get to a certain age where you kinda just stop caring about politics and you wanna care about the things that you're doing. For me, it was the music, the art. I was a jock before that. All I cared about was sports, played hockey in college. Um, so it's been a bit of a journey, and then kind of, like, towards the end of, what I would say was my music career, I I mean, I still do it occasionally, but for the most part, I've phased out. I was in LA, totally surrounded by libs, psycho leftists. All musicians, for the most part, are leftists. And this was the Obama era. And so,
Sorry, keep talking. I'm just gonna
yeah,
let
no
that.
worries. So this was the Obama era, and it was just endless propaganda being spewed at me about how great Obama was, and I was like, "I'm not down with all that." But when you're in the music industry, they kinda sense if you're not on their team, and so if you're not vocal about your left-wing politics, they start to sniff you out, and actually that happened, of course, to someone in Mumford& and Sons who, was kind of
Oh,
like signaling that he wasn't down with all this, and then he happened to praise Andy Ngo for his book on Antifa and was immediately kicked out of the band. I mean, it was huge, huge uproar. So that was kind of where I started phasing out of the music industry and starting to feel like, hey, there's something really wrong in my country. And this was like, 2013, 14, and started getting a little more into politics and starting to pay attention. I got totally red pilled on Michael Savage and Alex Jones in that era. And then eventually started kind of writing casually about it very quickly. And then I started a small blog where I was just like going off on Michael Savage tier rants, but in writing about all the issues of the day. And that really burned a lot of bridges for me. A lot of people cut ties at that point, and there were some pretty nasty fallings out. I didn't talk to any of my friends about politics at the time. I just put it out on the internet, and people, of course, were really triggered by that. So
what was it called?
it was called citizenanalyst.net. And it was just kind of my musings and rantings. And I started really getting a taste for it and feeling like, hey, I kind of want to do this. And I'm already really one foot in the grave right now, politically and socially. So why not go all in? And so I decided I'm just going to do this for real. I'm going to step out of the music industry and step into the political arena, commentary, news reporting. And so I started at the time during the 2015-16 era during the election, started writing for a very small outlet called the Western Free Press. And I was the only pro-Trump writer at the time. And I was actually cautioned by my editor to tone it down because their financiers were not down with Trump. They wanted to more pro Rand Paul, Ted Cruz type stuff. Well, lo and behold, I ended up becoming far and away their most successful writer, which isn't a tall task at a small outlet. But because I was the only pro-Trump guy, I was doing, six-figure traffic on for a very small website on articles, and they were like, they kind of gave me a little bit of leeway, and they're like, okay, you're onto something, and you're getting good traffic, so we'll let you branch out a little bit. But they were really holding me back, and I said, I can't do this at a small outlet forever. That doesn't pay the bills. So I said, I got to jump up to a big independent outlet, and so I went to the 2016 RNC and ended up linking up with the InfoWars team. I was a big InfoWars fan. And shortly after the RNC, as I mentioned, I moved to Iceland and they needed somebody working in Europe to supplement the Watson brothers at the time, Paul Joseph Watson and his brother Steve, to
Mm.
really get the content going for the American audience. We were up hours earlier, of course. And so that's how I kind of got into journalism broadly. And then, of course, I mentioned the InfoWars Europe thing. Now, going back to the family situation, my mother ended up joining on as the executive director at a nonprofit called US Incorporated based in Michigan. And US Incorporated is tied in with a bunch of the DC nonprofits like FAIR, CIS, Pro English. And their product, the things that they were putting out were kind of antiquated. They had a printed newsletter, which is cool, but it only had, after 25 years of being around, something like 200 subscribers a month, which is, that's not going to pay the bills or for an organization either. And so they said, my mother said, you're really into these immigration issues. I think we need to put together something for the 21st century for our audience here at US Incorporated. So what we drummed up was essentially a spin on the Drudge Report. And I know a lot of people have done that and have done it kind of really just replicating exactly the same look of the Drudge Report and really not getting too creative with it. Well, actually, we gave it a little bit of a different look, and we focused strictly on immigration and border news. And at that time, it was towards the tail end of the Trump administration. The immigration situation was relatively under control. So finding enough content every day for the site was actually a bit of a challenge, but basically what we did was aggregate all the news stories, press releases, everything on a daily basis, rewrite the headlines and link out to the original content, which was very good at the time for US Incorporated. They needed something like that. And then a couple of years later, U.S. Incorporated actually ended up going under. They ended up getting closed down, and their funding got rerouted. And as in that process of the shutdown, we said, well, Border Hawk is actually starting to do really well. We want to preserve this. We want to take it off on our own. And so the board of directors said, if you guys can spin out your own 501c3 nonprofit for Border Hawk before we close the doors here, you're welcome to take it with you. And so we were able to do that. The paperwork was approved the day of closing, which was incredible. By the grace of God, we spun out Border Hawk into its own entity in 2022. And since then, we've really started expanding what we do in our operation. We moved away from aggregation more to exclusive reporting. We now have a White House correspondent. We have a pass to the White House as of the last couple of months here, which is a huge accomplishment for us. We've done some just incredible reporting on both sides of the southern border. I give a lot of credit to our team, specifically my brother, who has taken a lot of that on. He has spent months and months at the border during the Biden era, which was total pandemonium. We have a reporter across the border in Mexico. We have a reporter in Europe now. So it's still a small operation, but we've made progress with leaps and bounds, and we are on the radar with the Trump administration, which is fantastic. They've been sharing our work lately, and so we are trying to really just focus every day on immigration and border issues, which are now like that is the issue now. America is tuned into this. It was a top issue in the election, and now with the interior enforcement issues, everyone is paying attention to this. So that's kind of where we are right now at this point with Border Hawk.
Wow. So that's a lot. So tell me about Iceland. What was going on in Iceland?
It's an amazing place. It truly is.
But is there? I thought Iceland was like one of the few places that isn't really touched by this.
It recently has begun to be. There are some issues now. While I was living there, there weren't really. And that's one of the reasons I picked Iceland. It's outside of the EU. It's not part of the European Union. So some of the censorship of the European Union doesn't apply in Iceland. And I felt like it was a more secure place. It was kind of coincidental, but at the same time, it looked like Hillary Clinton was going to win that election in 2016. And I was like, you know what? Jumping ship out of the U.S. for a bit is not a bad idea. Thankfully, Donald Trump won, which was totally amazing. But we took the opportunity to go live in Reykjavik for a year. And then the ultimate goal was to get to Switzerland, which is another non-EU country, and in my opinion, the most beautiful country in the world. And we ended up there for 5 years. So lived overseas for 6 years in total. And once I was in Switzerland, really started kind of branching out into the neighboring countries to really see what was going on with immigration. And it's crazy. It's crazy what's going on in Italy and France and Germany. And then, of course, to contrast that against that, when you go to places like Poland, Hungary, and even the Balkans, in many ways, it's a different situation. It's not quite so overwhelmed, and you really see this contrast between the two different Europes at this point.
Yeah, the two Europes. That's a funny idea. The two different Europes, the ones that has closed borders and the one that has open borders. That's what you're saying, right? And so the closed borders countries are basically Poland, Hungary. What else?
Well, there are places where there are some issues. For instance, the Balkans. The Balkans are a route to get into Europe. So in certain corridors of the Balkans, there have been large flows of quote unquote migrants. I hate calling them migrants. I call them invaders. They're illegals. Whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But
God, what do you call them? It's a weird word. Did you know Martin Sellner?
yes, definitely.
Yeah, so he's been on here. He's great. He's great.
Great.
Europe has these on both left and right. They have something that we do not have in America, which is these like heartthrob political activists that are like young guys that all the women go nuts for.
Right.
On both sides. The left, they have a lot of these lefty guys in Europe that are also like they blow up trains and then they're like on the run. We don't have that in America. We don't have like sexy activists. It doesn't exist. We don't have like sex symbol activists. That's just like not the American way. But he is that in Europe on the right. And he's like going and he's like doing these big tricks and stuff. He's a fascinating guy. And he's behind, according to him, he's behind the word remigration, which means just kicking them out, basically, right?
Yes, send him home.
But again, that word it uses the word migrant. I know, I hate the word migrant also.
Mhm.
It's like, what the fuck does that mean?
Right.
But what do you call them? I mean, a illegal immigrant, that's a pretty good, because that sounds bad at least, illegal immigrant.
And the issue becomes is that many of them are legalized. So leftists will say, no, they're here
Right.
legally.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have
Well, what do you
asylum
mean?
claim.
What about legal? What about legal? They're seeking asylum. That's legal. Yeah, I know. It's horrible.
Yeah, I don't even like calling them economic migrants because I think it runs deeper than that. They are specifically in Europe. They're there to rape and pillage, and they
Well,
happen
the
to.
Muslims are, right? That's the Muslims are there for that reason, right?
Sure, yeah. There are economic migrants, and it's interesting, like, long before the conflict, if you were to catch an Uber in Poland, the chances of your driver being Ukrainian were very high. So in various countries, there's different ethnic groups that kind of gravitate towards picking up these Uber jobs. And so, like, in Germany, you go and it'll be an African Muslim. If you go in France, it'll be an African Muslim or a Middle Eastern Muslim. Kind of a overlap with Germany and France, very similar. But then when you go to Poland, your driver's often Ukrainian. I would consider at that time, especially prior to the conflict, that these people were actual economic migrants. They could have a better life in
You mean
Poland.
the Ukrainians?
Yes, yes, the
Yeah.
Ukrainians, exactly. And
But are we
so
just saying that because the Ukrainians are white? What kind of racist are you, Dan? No, but I'm just saying, like, why do we like the Ukrainians and not the Muslims? I mean,
I'm
it's
not
pretty.
saying that I do. I'm not saying that I do. And the Poles really resent the amount of Ukrainians in their country taking these jobs and kind of just like culturally they're not terribly dissimilar the way that the migrants are from the Middle East and Africa. These are totally disparate cultures. But between Ukraine and Poland, it's not all that much different. And these people generally aren't committing tons of crimes and rapes and things like that. So I do think that a lot of them come over just to work in Poland because the money's better and they can bring it back over with them or send it home.
Yeah. No, look, I'm completely kidding. It's obviously completely different to have a Ukrainian person come into your country than a African or an Arab Muslim. It's a completely different thing. And we are, of course, have to walk around living in the total fantasy that it's the same thing, which it is obviously not the same thing. So, but that being said, I mean, um, what do you say? What's your overall policy? Do you think any immigration should be allowed? I mean, you're covering this stuff every single day. So, what's your solution? Do we end Hart Cellar? Is Hart Cellar already ended? Where are we at with the actual policy?
I increasingly become more radicalized with this issue. In the past, I might have said legal immigration okay, illegal immigration not. I'll be totally frank. On my mother's side, her parents came from Costa Rica. They came for a better life. They created a better life. My grandfather created extremely successful freight forwarding company. After working for many years at Whirlpool, ended up going down to Miami to start. At the time, was the largest freight forwarding company in the country between the United States and Central America, and so they love this country. My grandfather was a Kennedy Democrat and was just in love with this country. He loved paying taxes. He overpaid his taxes, totally revered the nation. He served in the military in the United States. He's interned at Arlington at this point.
Overpaying taxes. I've never heard that
He
one before.
he loved it. He'd cut extra checks to the government. So
That's
that's a different that was a different era. That was
yeah.
back in the 50s, So at that time, I think you could have definitely made an argument for legal immigration, a controlled legal immigration. That, of course, was after a long immigration moratorium from the 20s. But what has transpired since Hart Cellar is something completely different. And I
Yeah.
think that I am of the opinion now. I think like 100 million people need to be kicked out of the country, and not just
100
illegals.
million.
I think 100 million people need to go.
Damn.
Yeah, because I think it's pretty okay to assume that the number of illegals in the country is in the ballpark of 50 million, 40 to 50
Mhm.
million. We know 20 million came in under Biden alone, and we know
Right.
prior to that everyone was kicking around figures of 20 to 40. Even people like Ann Coulter, people who have studied this stuff, who have studied remittances. The number, of course, is far higher than 11 million. And so I think that baseline 50 million illegals need to go, and there are probably 50 million more people who have no business being here. And my opinion now is that we're full, and we need an immigration moratorium, net zero for a long time until we can get this all sorted out.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think, again, it's like people forget that the border was pretty much closed, I think, from 1920 to 1965. I think there was almost nothing. It was it was really, really impossible to emigrate here during that time. And that was because the Ellis Island era went too far and they were like, okay, it's too much. We got to turn off the faucet. And it's just so obvious that you have to turn off the faucet sometimes. Sometimes you just have to say, even if you are the most liberal person in the world, you have to at some point say, okay, it's too much. The resources, this remittances thing, I learned the other day, the number two source of GDP in Mexico for like 20 years has been remittances from America. That's ridiculous. That's just leaking money. You're just leaking. You're leaking your money out to a foreign country. Why are you supporting a foreign country that way? That's ridiculous. It's not, again, you're not like giving them money quid pro quo. That's just money that's disappearing into Mexico and not going to benefit America. Why would you do that?
And
Why
not
would
only that,
you as a country do that? It makes no sense.
right? And not only that, the money, I mean, I'm not in favor of high taxes, but a lot of that money was never taxed in the first place. So it's earned, in
Right.
our country without anything going into the system to
Yeah.
help, to fix the roads, whatever it is that they say taxes go to, but then it gets sent out. And we're
And
doing
it's
that.
gone.
Right.
Right.
We're supporting so many countries like that.
So it's doubly, it's not taxed as income, and it's not going to just be as our GDP. So it's just leaking out. And so that to me is like, come on, man. You have to at a certain point get this together. And I mean, look, I understand. I was thinking about this last night. I was thinking about BMW, right? If I'm B and you're this is good because we're talking about Germany. If I'm BMW, you see the problem, right? It's like you have this great era of German manufacturing. Everybody who's working for you, I assume, is German or maybe Polish or Ukrainian. These guys working at these factories, they're super pros, but then you reach a point now that we're in a global economy where it's just so expensive to keep those people around, right? I mean, because it's like their quality of life is so high and you're competing with India, you're competing with these other car manufacturers. And what's your solution? If you're BMW in Germany, which is, probably one of the most powerful entities in the world, of course you're going to be like, well, we want slaves. You know what I mean? You're going to do the 1-2 calculation in your head. And you're going to say, well, we want all these people down here. And you know what? We're morally against slavery because the whole world went through this whole thing against slavery, but they want to come. They want to come here. So what's the problem, right? What's the big problem? And then it's like, well, it just is slavery. It's slavery just by a different name. It's the same thing, more or less, right?
Yeah, of course, for these people, their quality of life goes up substantially. But the quality of life for Germans goes down substantially. We see Germany is in a financial crisis. And there are a variety of reasons for that. But one of them is they're supporting this welfare state for millions of people who have come in just in the last 10 years. It's totally unsustainable. And if you go to Germany now, I mean, the place is falling apart. It is falling apart for so many different reasons as well. But part of it is social cohesion is almost non-existent in Germany at this point. And Germany was a very tight-knit place before that. And living in Switzerland, you actually kind of get a taste of what it was like a little, before Germany headed down that path. Switzerland has made a lot of bad decisions on immigration as well. I mean, their cities there are now becoming overrun by the same people that are overrunning the other parts of Western Europe. So it is disconcerting. I actually lived in a university town called St. Gallen for a couple of years, and it was the first place we landed. So it was kind of like we took the job and went. And it wasn't our first choice, but it was a good town. It's a solid town. It's a beautiful Swiss university town. However, we were living in the old town in the city center, essentially, where it's meant to be the prettiest, the most inviting for tourists and locals, parks, things like that. And while we were there, we noticed just this uptick in Eritreans and Somalis being brought into the city center to live. We knew they lived in the outskirts and kind of like the less nice, neighborhoods and the, in the apartment buildings. But during our time there, we started seeing more and more of them. They gather in the parks. They go to the swimming holes to ogle the girls, sexually assault the girls. And the final straw for us was being asleep one night, and we hear a commotion in the alley below us, and it's two African men fighting with a broken bottle. They apparently were intoxicated. There was an African bar down the way, and it had Tuesday night Africa night or whatever, and totally hammered.
Yeah,
And this is
that's
a
what
kind of a crazy story. We watch these guys fighting. One of them put their fist or a bottle, whatever, through a shop window, a jewelry store, and there's blood all over the sidewalk. These two guys are going at it. And while we're watching, a police car pulls up, no lights on, quietly takes these guys and, handcuffs them, whatever, and lead them into the building right across the street from us. And while this is happening, a couple of people come out of the building, white people with clipboards, clearly they're handlers, and bring them into the building. Very quiet. We're the only people who witnessed this for as far as I know. And so we're like, wow, that was scary. The next morning I go out to see the damage, to see the blood on the street. The window was already fixed. There was no blood anywhere. The whole
Whoa.
thing effectively never happened.
Just disappeared.
Yes, totally. And I
Damn.
said, how often is this happening
Holy shit,
all
dude.
over the
That's a
place?
crazy fucking story.
By morning, by morning. So
I'm getting chills from this because
I
it's
know.
like, damn, you're right. That probably happens so much. And they have
Exactly.
some program where it's like, just pretend this didn't happen. But it's,
Exactly.
we're gonna cover it up.
Don't
Damn,
alarm the
bro.
public. And so actually I went to
Fuck.
the building that they brought them into because I was like, what's going on here? And half of the names were like Mohammed on the doorbells because you have to put your name on the doorbell in Switzerland. So it was like all these African names. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So we go away for a month to go back to the US for holidays or whatever. Come back and we look out of our window at this building, and in the flat across from us, there's just a bunch of African men with a big Somali flag hanging on their wall, hanging out. And we said, that's it, we're done. And we ended up moving up into Gestad, billionaires paradise, and never saw a migrant up there ever.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's this is why the liberals have luxury beliefs, because actually the more migrants and homeless people they can put at the bottom of the hill, the more their stuff is worth at the top of the hill. That's the whole thing. It's like, actually, we criticize these libtards, these rich libtards, for being hypocrites, but in fact, economically, destroying the streets is good for them because it makes their house worth 3 times as much because nobody can go anywhere besides their house, and so that's why it's like, actually, in a really insidious, disgusting way, these horrible libtards in LA that go around and force the streets to be terrible. They're actually operating in their own interests, and they're destroying the world for everybody else so that their, little enclaves can be all the more valuable. They don't know they're doing this, but at some level, subconsciously, that's what they're doing. I mean, people like George Soros know, probably, but
Right. There is like an echelon where, like, if you're wealthy enough, you can get away from all of it. But I
yeah,
do
right.
think that LA is a good case point that the blowback is starting to wash over these wealthy neighborhoods, because places like Beverly Hills and um what's that? Was it Manassas, or is it what's right north of LA? One of these really nice, celebrity neighborhoods.
Manassas. What
No,
are
is that
you? That's in Boston.
no,
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 you're
what's
thinking of Calabasas, probably.
Calabasas, Calabasas.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I lived in California. Calabasas. They're starting to see these South American theft gangs are starting to come in. So
They say that. So far I have not gotten that vibe.
okay.
So far I have not. There was a couple great moments during the fires. That was horrible, by the way. I'm not saying anything was great about the fires. I was actually very affected by, I mean, our house didn't burn down, but I was very close to it and it was very serious. And I'm actually upset that there hasn't been more blowback, etc., from it. But one of the highlights was that there was this woman who's like the total woke professor in every way, and she is like being interviewed while she's watching like looting gangs like robbing her neighborhood, and she's like, I told them I don't understand why they're here, blah, blah. And it's like it's dawning on her what's going on like as it's happening. So I do think it has been definitely a rightward shift here. It's just hasn't quite been felt yet. But overall, I'd say they're so good at protecting themselves. You know, these fucking limousine liberals, they're so good at isolating themselves. And even when they do get affected, which is very rare, they compartmentalize it. You know, they say, "Oh, well, this, you know, it's his. This is." It's easier for them to do nothing, right? It's easier for them to just be the victim and be like, "Yeah, well, that sucks, but you know, this is what it's like when they're in need." So far, I have not seen that class of people like impacted too much. Um, yeah, I don't know. So, what are you seeing? What are you seeing down in these border towns? You know, how are they? Are you down there a lot? Are you actually on the border, being a border hawk?
I was earlier this year. Like I said, my brother really handles those duties. I have a young family, so getting out of here too often is a little difficult, and putting myself in dangerous situations. I do a little less of that than I used to in the past. But earlier this year, we took the whole Border Hawk team down to Eagle Pass and Piedras Negras. We have a reporter in Piedras Negras, which is the Mexican border town opposite Eagle Pass. Eagle Pass, for anyone who doesn't know, I would say was the epicenter of the Biden invasion, that and Lukeville, Arizona. But Eagle Pass was, um, on some days, they were seeing 5 to 10,000 illegal crossings in a day. In Eagle Pass, if I remember correctly, the population's around 30,000. It's kind of a sleepy border town, definitely high crime, not a great place. But what they saw during the Biden era was absolutely monumental. And so we went down there to report from both sides of the border. And what was interesting about that whole experience was basically the vast majority of the illegals that came through to get into Eagle Pass and cross the river were passing through Piedras Negras. And essentially, there is one shelter in Piedras Negras. Other cities, larger cities, will have a few shelters, but this one basically had one shelter. It was technically run by like Catholic nuns or something like that, but it basically was a central point for all different NGOs as well, the Red Cross.
Wow,
And anyway, so uh, and on any given day, they were seeing multiple groups of 1 to 2,000 would come through this shelter.
wow.
They couldn't possibly have gotten much in the way of resources, but the day that we went, there were a couple of hundred, and so we actually were the first American journalists to get inside this shelter with cameras. Thankfully,
So, can
because
you
our
actually see the Rio Grande here? So, this is like a actual river town. So, the Rio Grande goes through the town.
essentially, yes. So Eagle
Yeah.
Pass goes right up to the river. At that time, the park there, I forget what the
Wow.
park was called. It's this huge park where there's actually a golf course, which is hilarious. People actually like, people go play golf there. There's an amazing video from the Biden era. I think it was 23, where there's like 2,000 illegals gathered under the bridge, or basically in this pen that Border Patrol was using to process and just start, they'd bring them all to this pen underneath the international bridge, and then Border Patrol would progressively, load them into transports and move them to processing centers. But there's this amazing video where these guys are playing golf, and this guy is like ready to hit a tee shot, and all you see is him, teeing up, hits the ball, and then you hear this massive uproar, huge applause, and the camera pans over, and it's 2,000 illegals like clapping for his tee off, which is like it's hilarious.
Oh,
It's
weird.
horrifying
Yeah.
and hilarious at the same time. So yeah, we were down there, and that was quite an experience. It's a seedy area. The whole area was overrun with the military because they militarized that whole park to keep people, reporters out, of course, keep prying eyes out, and also make it totally available to 5 to 10,000 illegals on a given day. Typically, it was 1 to 2,000 during the height, but there were surge days. And yeah, it's right on the river, so the illegals just cross into the river en masse. And what was interesting about going back to that shelter was we discovered that when they would all go to the shelter, sometimes let's say 1,000 would arrive in the morning. They'd all arrive together. What they were doing was taking trains known as La Bestia. La Bestia is kind of a
Mm.
blanket term for all the trains that run north to the US border that illegals hop on the top of and ride on. It's a very dangerous journey.
Oh.
And so they would arrive by train. They'd all pile off the train. Then they'd make their way to this shelter. At the shelter, maybe they catch a bite to eat, a shower. I don't know what they would do there, a quick nap or whatever. And then they were receiving GPS coordinates We never found out who was giving them the GPS coordinates, but the assumption was that it was either Mexican authorities, local authorities, or smuggling groups who were telling them exactly how to get from the shelter to a certain specific point on the banks of the Rio, which was, let's say, a 20 or 30-minute walk, and then to cross en masse, and that US Border Patrol will be waiting on the other side to receive them. And so it was a highly coordinated operation.
Wait a second. Why would Border Patrol be there to receive them? What do you
Be
mean? What do you
because that was the policy of the Biden administration, to basically receive everyone, give them a notice to appear, and dump them into
Oh
the
my
country.
God.
Very, very few got turned away. Very few. The policy was
Jeez.
just process and
Let
release.
them
Catch
free.
and release. Exactly.
Unbelievable.
And so this was happening every day. It was happening twice a day on many occasions. And so we found out they were getting these GPS coordinates. One of our reporters embedded with these groups and actually like shadowed them down to the banks, and then Border Patrol be waiting on the other side. And it even goes a little bit deeper than that in terms of the coordination by the administration, the Biden administration. The state of Texas ended up starting to take some measures to try to keep these people out. So one of the things they did was put this big kind of like a fencing, a razor wire fencing, razor wire top fencing, right in that area, that main crossing area. And our cameras that were the only ones there on scene when this happened. The Biden administration sent Border Patrol with a heavy duty forklift to go and use the forks to raise this entire fencing up so that a group that was crossing could get in and then crawl under the fence and then be received by Border Patrol. So no matter that Texas was trying to keep them out, the federal government was insisting that they come in, and they actually sabotaged Texas efforts to keep them out. So that's how coordinated this was, and pre-planned, that they were even going against the will of the state of Texas to make sure that these people kept coming in.
Well, and there was some other, remember there was the barbed wire in the river. That was another thing that was like Texas versus the feds, and
The
people were like,
floating
"Oh,
barrier.
constitutional crisis. There's gonna be war," but nothing ever happened.
Right.
Yeah. It's so weird. It's like a dance between it's like this like naughty dance between these like slaves and the rich people of America. And they're just like, we're gonna get you here. Don't worry. We're gonna figure out how to get you here. You just gotta kind of like play this game. You gotta pretend that the border's not open because we just need to pretend like we're protecting our citizens. We just need to like pretend. But once you're here, don't worry about it. Like we'll set you up. We'll hire you. You'll come work for us. Because I mean, that's what they're doing, right? These people are basically subsistence farmers in El Salvador or something or wherever, Honduras, and then they see on TV, oh, I can get more money in America, and then that's why they come, right?
In many ways, yeah, but I think we saw this kind of shift in even what was being offered to these people once they got to the States, because we saw in previous years, we would have assumed that they were coming here to work, right? Coming to work the fields, coming to work the hotels, the restaurants, whatever. But in this latest wave, we saw a lot of them just go directly to major cities and go straight on welfare and live in, five-star hotels, have everything provided to them, cash, assistance, food. So it was like this transformation of what the draw was, what the pull was. It was basically the federal government saying, we're just going to get as many of these people in here as possible, and we're going to create as many incentives for them to come as possible. We don't even care if they work. Of course, some of them do, but a lot of them don't. They went to
But
Denver.
why then? But, like, why would we support them if there's not some economic incentive somewhere? Why would we support them?
Well, I think that the easy answer is, of course, political power. Obviously, the
Mm.
redistricting issue, the census issue, the voting issue, ballot harvesting, you name it, all that, just getting all these people in to ensure that their votes are cast for Democrats. But I think deeper than that, I think it is the intentional destruction of the country and the overwhelming of the heritage population here, because United States is the golden calf. If the globalist communists can take down the United States, it's kind of lights out. They really get full throttle ahead. And I think they actually had made a lot of progress during COVID in terms of like really beating down the American population, and of course that happened in Europe, across the world, but really was so successful in hurting the United States in so many ways, hurting the Trump administration to ensure that he didn't get it reelected, even though I think he was. But then I really think that it is the ultimately is the sabotage of the heritage population and the way of life in the United States because there's still that very freedom centric, anti-government attitude throughout the country. And these people, they don't think that way. So if we can be forced to fund our own invasion, to fund the destruction of our country, to tear apart the social fabric of the nation, then I think that the final hurdle for globalist intentions is kind of out of the way because they've already been so successful in Europe.
Funny that you say golden calf. That's the perfect metaphor here because, of course, the golden calf is, biblically the thing you're not supposed to worship, right? So funny that I think you maybe meant golden goose, but the golden calf is golden calf. Do people say that?
I feel like
Uh,
I don't know. It's the
it
golden
is the
goose
golden
too, but
calf.
I think it's like this,
For
just like
George Soros, it is definitely the golden calf. I'll tell you that, and
right.
he should know that, but of course he doesn't because whatever.
Well,
But
golden goose too.
it's the golden goose, the golden calf. Okay, so but why did this happen? This is why I think the reason why people can't realize that this is an invasion is because they have no frame of reference. They have no frame of reference to understand that this is an invasion. They don't see it as an invasion. If they saw it as an invasion, they would be a lot better off. I mean, I think one of my most successful streams ever was analyzing the whole immigrant protest in LA that totally fell flat. They were sort of no kings, didn't work out, very poorly organized by Randy Weingarten, but and obviously just not a good idea. But there was this image that the Republicans tried to capitalize on. It was a little unclear whether it was created by them or created by the left, which was this guy on a car, and he's got a skull mask on, like, ooh, very scary, and he's shirtless, and he's got, like, a chain, and he has, like, Misfits pants, like, with the Misfits logo on it, and he's waving a Mexican flag that clearly just came out of a box somewhere. You can, like, see the creases on it, and the car is burning, and it says, like, "Fuck the police," or whatever, right, on a burning Waymo car. And that was supposedly a symbol of an invader, right? Like, he was supposed to look like an invader. But I don't think people see it that way. I don't think the average American sees that guy and thinks invader. They see that guy, even as evil as he was portrayed, and they think Mexican angry guy. Like, they don't see that as an invasion. So why can't people see it? In any other context, you would say, okay, here's a bunch of foreign people that don't look like me, don't act like me, don't believe like me, coming into my home and doing bad things and taking up resources and sending all their resources out of here. Why is that not an invasion? So why can't people see that?
I was just texting my brother about this because I'm pretty sure that it is my brother that screenshotted that image from somebody's live stream and then it went viral. Because I remember he sent it to me. He's like, check this out. Got it from
Well, it was like
one.
a photo shoot though, dude. It was when you see the video of it, you see like 50 photographers around him.
Right.
So it was very weird because it was clearly a photo op. It was a photo op from somebody. He also has like zero body fat. He's very like that's not what a Mexicans generally who are in this situation do not have zero body fat. So it's like it was clearly he had been casted in some way. I mean, not to be super conspiratorial, but anyway. Sorry, go ahead.
He's responding to me now. I'm pretty sure he's the one that got this. So I think that, well, first of all, when you see these riots, like the Antifa riots, the BLM, there's always this troop of camera people, amateur Antifa photographers, also riot reporters and all that. So they're always looking for the action. And sometimes they do catch some of these iconic images just because they're the only ones on the scene, and that's what happens. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but that is typically what happens at these kind of riot situations. So I think it could have been coincidental. But I think that, and he just sent me the image.
Yeah,
I
I'll
think
find
that,
it.
yeah, I mean,
I
there's
think
a
it's
lot of people circled around. It looks like it was kind of the central focus of this riot, and I think that in some ways, some of these rioters also set themselves up for an iconic moment. They wanna be, the one doing something totally crazy in front of the camera, looking a certain way, and so I think it's part coincidence, but also partly, like, it's kind of, like, emblematic. This guy was emblematic in some ways of, like, the arrogance of these people who believe that this country is theirs, especially in California, where they're always talking about, this land was Mexico, we're gonna take it back and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so the attitude of this type of person, he looks like a gangster of some kind, looks like he spent some time in the gym, probably in the prison gym, I would imagine. Um, but
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like he looks casted to me. Wait, let me find him.
could be.
Protester on the car. It's just these things, they all have this same these photo ops of the guy standing on the car. This is when the car is burning. It always looks the same. And I don't know if that's because of it's staged, or if it's because, somebody who did really, really good work on this is do you know Park McDougald? He writes for Tablet. He did, of course, when all the protesters started being pro-Palestine, Tablet did a big expose on like where their money comes from. And it's all the same networks. The whole question was, why do they all have the same tent? Right? And you realize that this is a very advanced and sophisticated lefty protest action Alinsky network that's been operating for 5 decades, and it's just they have their channels, they have their flyers, they have their, "Oh, the people, here's your tactics." And, 5% of the population is lonely and stupid enough to believe it, right? And so that's just how they roll. And this guy really felt like an Alinsky image to me.
Mhm.
Alinsky's whole thing is the point is not the action, the point is the reaction to the action. And that's why they generate these images, because the images create the reaction. George Floyd, best example. So yeah, here's this guy. This is what we're talking about, right? This dude.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. In any case, look, we can argue all day about like why he's there or what he stands for, but why do people this guy to me does not look like an invader because he's alone, right? That's a little bit of the problem. The left loves making images they love more than anything in the world, the image of the sole guy standing up with his fist with a ring of police around him. They love that image because they know that image creates in the viewer the sense of, oh, here's a freedom fighter who's up against the forces of authoritarian fascism, right? They love those images. Floyd was all like single black girl in flowy dress with shot from the back with a line of police in front of her, right? They fucking love those images. They're bullshit, but they love generating them. So the reason this doesn't work to me as an invader is because he is alone. And so if he's alone and doing it by himself, he looks like a freedom fighter. He doesn't look like an invader. Whereas if we can get pictures of like 10 of those guys beating up one person on the street, which is now we see those videos more and more, that's a much better image, in my opinion. All this to say, why do you think Americans have such a hard time, or Westerners in general, same thing in Europe, have such a hard time seeing these people as invaders?
I think part of it is because they have been woven progressively into the fabric of society. So I lived in Santa Ana, California, which I'm sure you'll know, for years during my band years, and I felt like a foreigner in my own land in Santa Ana. And when I first got there, I kind of expected it because it's like, Mexicans, California, it's just like synonymous. Mexicans, Texas, synonymous. Mexicans, Arizona, New Mexico. So like, if you just assume that these people have always been a part of the country, they've always been part of society, then if you see a few more of them, it doesn't necessarily shock you, I guess. Um, and so people have been conditioned to feel that way. People have been conditioned to see people around their communities all over the country as landscapers, builders. Over the last 20, 30 years, that's really increased, of course. But you just kind of see them as like, oh, they're the workers, like they're the people who
Yeah,
do the
they're the
jobs.
work. They're the work people. They're the
Yeah,
working people. Yeah,
they're
right.
just
Right.
here
Right.
for a good life.
Yeah,
They're
come
here for
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's that it just makes me think of that ice meme that's been going around the last couple of days. It's really poignant. It's just two frames, and it's an ICE agent arresting, a little Mexican family, and they're crying, and it says, "We just wanted a better life." And the ICE agent in the next panel is watching them being carted away, and he said, "So do we."
Yeah, so do I. I saw that. I saw it. That was good. That was good. That was
Yeah,
really good. So, yeah, that was a good
powerful,
image.
simple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think that's just the attitude of Americans has been we've been, like, progressively softened towards these people. I think that
yeah.
something that has changed during the Biden era was that, people from other countries and other parts of the world started coming in. And, so for instance, like Fox News really honed in on the Chinese invasion. Oh, the China, China, China. Okay, yeah, that's
Mhm.
disturbing. I'm probably a little less concerned about them than the guys from the thousands from Senegal that came in and settled in Ohio, or the Haitians, the 500,000 Haitians that came over here. Like,
Well,
people
the
started coming
Haitians
from
are just a fucking disaster. Like,
they all gotta go back.
you need to keep the Haitians as far away from you as you possibly can. I mean, no offense to Haitians, there's some good ones, but, I mean, if we're judging based on the society from whence they came, like, man, that is just a nightmare. But yeah, anyway, keep going.
Yeah, so Haiti is like the Somalia of the Western Hemisphere. It's,
Right.
the worst. But I think that, so people started seeing that it wasn't just, guys from Mexico coming in to mow your lawn anymore. It was Africans, it was the Chinese, it was the Haitians, Uzbeks. I mean, just, this insane variety. And anyone who was paying attention at all to what was going on at the border saw, like, in Lukeville, Arizona, for instance, they were having these surges of Middle Eastern and African men, Muslim men coming through into Arizona. And there's different reasons for why different people cross at different parts of the border. But I think that probably started to rattle people a little bit. But I think we've been conditioned to accept a certain number of Central Americans and Mexicans that are just inevitably going to live around us to do the jobs that Americans don't want to do. I don't feel that way, but I think, a lot of Americans have been softened in that way, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Okay, but so, I still don't really get, like, why? Like, what is it just as simple like, the part that starts to get fuzzy is when you say that there's not even an economic justification, that there's not even it's not even about economics, it's literally about the plot of global communism. But that's, like, pretty abstract. Here's this, here, I wanted to show this cartoon. This is a good cartoon while you're answering that question. Here's the cartoon he's talking about. So, yeah, it's like, we have in our head all the time this justification of why are these people coming here? We just want a better life, which is in America, this is supposed to be what we do. We give people the chance at a better life, and this is, of course, true. But okay, then the next panel, it's the ICE agent saying, they're saying, "We're just looking for a better life," then he's saying, "So are we," and it's true. It's like the people who are locally here also have interests, and people are gonna say, "Oh, ladder puller," and I'm like, "Yeah, some ladders have to be pulled. If you have zombies infiltrating your compound, you can't just be like, 'Okay, we're just sorry, we're not gonna be ladder pullers.'" Like, no, there has to be some limit. You know? And when you have 20,000,000 undocumented people coming in here, and we can see the price of houses, we can see the ridiculousness of inflation, obviously there's a problem. Anyway, sorry. So, yeah, that's a great cartoon. Right, but okay. So the answer that this is, global communism, right? Like, is that really what this is? It's like there's a group it's like a group of global communists?
Yeah, yeah, I totally believe that.
Okay.
I mean, you could call them whatever political ideology that's easier to apply. I mean, probably they're closer to fascists. I mean, technically in the kind of textbook, merging corporations with the government kind of a look. You could call them socialists, limousine liberals, whatever you want to call them, but they do believe in global control. And I think that COVID was such a great example of what it looks like with top-down global control. We saw every country, with very few exceptions, fall in line with this agenda that was totally tyrannical, and there were very few aberrations from those policies.
It's
And we saw them
amazing.
come in at different, eras in the COVID rollout, which actually that bodybuilder from Canada, Chris, I forget what his last name is, he had seen one of these documents that was being circulated around Canada, and he laid it out ahead of time. Whether or not he guessed it, I don't know, but he laid out, like, how it was gonna come in progressively. Different countries were gonna go harder at it at first. I experienced that living in Switzerland. In Switzerland, at the beginning of COVID, they didn't go too crazy. We weren't forced to wear masks, nothing like that. And then I traveled to the States, and New York was in total panic mode, lockdown, masks everywhere, vaccines, whatever. And I was like, oh, well, Switzerland's going to be fine. They're not doing this. So we're cool there. Can't wait to get back. Got back to Switzerland a month later, masks everywhere. Can't go into businesses without, your Vax card and all that stuff. And I was like, man, that guy, Chris, really called like it was going to come in phases and different, because each government was going to approach their population a little bit differently, knowing that how they would react to it and all that. And of course, Sweden was one of the outliers, which totally shocked me because Sweden is so cucked in so many
They're
other
pretty
ways.
yeah, but, they have a few weird nuances. They're also like that with cigarettes.
Yeah,
Like they try to force Swedes to not have cigs, and they're like, "No, fuck you. We're
right.
doing," or tobacco or whatever, because they're just obsessed with it. You're so right, man. COVID was absolutely the moment where you felt the sting of globalism truly. And it was made you just look at Alex Jones and be like, "Damn, that motherfucker was right the entire time." He's the first guy I ever heard say globalist.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
look, I don't you're probably much more of an Alex Jones guy than me. I don't listen to Alex Jones. Yeah, a lot of the stuff he says, very crazy in my opinion, but spiritually, he's correct. He is, to me, he's like the poet of our time, where he is like unpacking something that no one else was able to really understand before him. And he'd been talking about it for 20 years. And he just got all he understood globalism. Globalism's the perfect word for it. It's not I don't even want to get into this, but it's not actually the Jews. Globalist does not mean Jew. It really doesn't. It's not the same thing. And this is what he gets. He understood that there is this force of globalism in the world, and it is my personal belief about it is that it's very innocent. I don't think I worked in pharma. I saw some of this stuff. It's not really coordinated. There are people like Soros who are evil dragons who, need to be slayed as a dragon, in metaphorically. Uh, but there's very few of those people. At least from what I see. There's very few actual thinking globalists. It's more just like a vacuum. It's when you have a vacuum at the top of the world, somebody's gonna fill it. It's gonna be pulling shit up into it. And it's like now so who gets pulled into it? The most powerful people. And pharma is the most powerful people. So they got sort of sucked up into this role of telling the entire globe what to do. But that's a huge fucking problem. As we saw with the masks, that's a massive fucking problem. And somebody needs to really pay attention to it. And I think you're right that open borders is basically a function of the class of people that is the closest to that vacuum. And those people care about certain shit, and they don't care about borders, and they don't understand about decentralized power. They don't think about it. They don't get it. So I think you're right in a way.
Yeah, and I actually want to use the COVID example as kind of to tie it back into what you were asking about, like why do this to the United States? The COVID thing, I believe, would still be going on right now if not for places like the state of Florida, perhaps
Yeah.
Sweden, and maybe even Mexico to some degree, because Mexico was like kind of half in, half out. But the reason I think that it all fell apart is because Florida stopped playing ball pretty early. Like at the very beginning, they went along with the thing, but
Yeah.
immediately, like right away, DeSantis was like, "No, we're not doing this." That doesn't mean they handled the situation perfectly here. Like I lived here during COVID; it wasn't perfect, but in comparison with the rest of the country, it was something totally different. And what people were able to see from around the world was that there were these little havens on the globe that were not going along with everything, and everything was fine. And they were
And you could
like,
feel it. You could feel it in Florida. I went to Florida during that time, and you could feel it on the street. You
"Yeah,
could literally, because I was in California, a total opposite, and you could just feel death in California and life in Florida. It was the juxtaposition was astonishing. I also went up to Oregon during this time because I couldn't stand it. I once I was like, "Fuck this, I'm not doing this." Very early, I was panicking for about a week, and then I was like, I'm absolutely not participating." And then I got COVID, and it was like nothing, so I was totally fine. I went up to Oregon, and the line between Oregon and California, it was like you could feel the difference. It was like communism, not communism, and not communism just felt so much better.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that Florida created the unraveling of the entire COVID thing because it spread throughout the country and then it
Right.
spread globally. And it's the same thing to me where the globalists have their sights set on the United States. They have for many decades. And if the United States continues to some degree to resist it, the agenda doesn't work doesn't work
Totally.
worldwide. The day that they crush the United States, the lights go out, in my opinion. There will
I think
still
you're
be
right.
a few small outliers, like in El Salvador or some unexpected place. But in general, once they take down the US, if they are successful, global communism.
I think you're and just by its nature, America is very anti-communist, and it's just we are represented by a group of people that, or should be, that deeply understand the risk of tyranny. I mean, that's what this whole shit's about, right? And so you're right that it's like America is the final bulwark, really against this,
And
and
not to be a two-way, meme guy, but we still have the guns, and that plays a big role too.
totally, absolutely, and that probably terrifies them to But again, them, it's like I don't know if there is a them. I feel like the them is just like
In abstract.
the them is just weakness. It's the them is just I really don't know if there is the thing that I think we're gonna go to is the inevitable realization that again, if something is possible, it will occur. If globalism is possible, there will be a push towards it. And now globalism is kind of possible because of technology, right? I mean, it's like now you sort of could have, before you could not feasibly, physically have a global government. It's not feasible. You can't send money around, you can't pay taxes digitally, whereas now you can. So the fact that there now could be one world government means that inevitably weak people will get sucked into that. And it's like, unless Americans say, no, 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 this is not, we're not doing this. You're right. To me, it's like a cosmic spiritual dragon thing. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense what I'm saying, but, well, okay. What do you think is going to happen now with the border? So did Trump, I wish we had spent more time talking about this, but,
I like talking about other stuff too.
yeah, but in our last 10 minutes here, what you hear people saying not enough people are getting deported. Is that true?
It's true technically, but we also have to remember that, this is just getting started. And so if anyone thought that, we're going to start bringing 10,000 people out of the country every day after the damage that the Biden administration did to interior enforcement, that just never was going to happen. The way that the border has been secured is monumental. It's fantastic. They just announced yesterday that because the border is so quiet, they can now focus on painting the border wall black,
I saw
which
that. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I mean, anything. I would have liked to have seen a big concrete structure, but that's fine. The border is so quiet now. We're basically having zero illegal entries. There are, some that are being caught, of course, a few sneak in, but for the most part, nobody's getting in right now. And that will only continue to be tightened and tightened because every month we're seeing the numbers drop in a new historic low. So border secure, keep ramping that up, keep, ratcheting the ropes down and making sure that just nobody gets in. But in terms of interior enforcement, that's really just getting started, in my opinion. And so with the big, beautiful bill, They say now they have the funding to ramp up this effort, and you start seeing, what they're doing. They have over 100,000 applications for ICE now. How fast they can process these applicants and then get them properly trained is a question, because obviously, these people they can't just throw them out in the street. There's going to be mistakes left and right. People are going to start getting killed by accident. We don't want anything like that. We want like professionals on the street. They're trying to get 80,000 new beds, so they're launching all these different, partnerships with the states. We just found out yesterday the Cornhusker Clink will be the next one. It's not very large, only 280 beds. That's not really that much, but the effort has begun. My concern
Wait,
is that
what are the beds? The beds is for detention?
yes. So if you detain someone, you got to have somewhere to put them. It's
I
like
see.
the
Yeah,
law,
okay.
right? So, Alligator Alcatraz was something like 3,000. They're trying to scale up to 5,000. The new one in Tennessee is like 600 or whatever, and then in Indianapolis another 1,000. This is good. Need a lot more. So they're just starting to scale up. They're starting to put the personnel in place, which is good. My concern is that there's not enough time, because if 10,000 were coming in under Biden, 10,000 got to be going out a day under Biden just to get rid of Biden's
Just to
illegals.
be right. Yeah.
Right. And then we got to solve all the ones that are already here. There is talk that self-deportations are ramping up. That's a good thing. I was a little skeptical of that effort because I don't like seeing people get paid to leave the country. But it seems like supposedly it's working. Some studies indicate that up to 2 million people are now gone, 1.5, something like that. I think those numbers are really hard to pin down this early in the game, but there are signs. There are other data points that I'm seeing that I can't necessarily connect right away. But for instance, there's talk that occupancy rates in apartments across major cities in the U.S. is starting to fall significantly. What does that mean? Does that mean that these people were illegals that are no longer in the country? I'm not sure. There's questions about why has there still been all this new development if like across the country, were they planning for illegals to come in, like for more illegals to keep coming in? I don't know, but we're starting to see signs that the country is starting to empty out a little bit. That's a good thing, but the question is there enough time? Personally, I think that Trump should go for a third term. I think that I'd be fine with that. I think that this is a time when the left is talking about breaking all the rules. There are no rules.
Yeah.
Beto O'Rourke saying F the
Yep.
rules. There are no rules.
Mhm.
We need to have the same attitude right now. We're either going to save the country or we're not.
Mhm.
And it's all hands on deck. Of course, there'll be legal challenges to that. I don't really know what a President J.D. Vance looks like. He says a lot of good things right now. I know a lot of people like him. I'm still a little skeptical, but I'm willing to be optimistic. So if the effort that Trump starts now could continue for another 8 years under a J.D. Vance, then I'm in support of that. But I think this is a much longer than a 3.5-year cleanup. And you bring into the mix the fact that not only are we trying to solve the illegal immigration issue, we need to be solving the legal immigration issue. And also now this new push to start potentially cleaning up the cities, which isn't necessarily an immigration issue. It's intertwined.
Well, I think he's doing that because he knows that he needs wins, right? Because as you're saying, winning this thing is really, really hard, and that's why the people who did this are so satanic, because you can't put the genie. It's so hard to put the genie back in the bottle, right? I mean, at least if we can set up really serious border enforcement, hopefully the attrition and the hostility of coming here will really over time be a victory. But it's true that it's like in the short run, how do you win this? Um,
And
I
not
think
only that, this has to continue after Trump. It can't just be border secure for 3.5 years
and then be done. Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's over.
Yeah, man. So
It's
how do
big.
you do that? How do you do that? Like, what do you think could be done? I don't know. I mean, that's a insane question, but
Trump could just go full dictator. Stay in until Barron's ready. To be honest,
that's not gonna happen, man. It's not gonna. He's not gonna. Trump is not a Rubicon guy. He would have done it. He would have done it already. If he was gonna do it. I think. I don't think he's gonna do that.
I do think I have one theory about Trump though, and I think that first time around he was in way over his head and just didn't know how to navigate these waters. I do think Trump has to know that if he doesn't win and win significantly that 10 generations of Trumps after him are going to be persecuted and chased to the every end of the earth, and his progeny are going to face just the worst kinds of treatment by the next, power structure. And he has to realize that because of what they've done to his family. His family's been debanked. I mean, they talk about this all the time, and he's still around, he's still alive, he's still in power, but he has to realize, like, once he's out of power, once he's gone, I mean, they almost threw him into jail. They're gonna throw his kids into jail. They're gonna throw his grandkids into jail. They're gonna be hunting his family down. The Trump name is going to attract all the worst, people, all the worst players for 10 generations to come, I think. He's gonna be like, I mean, it'll be like saying the name Hitler in 50 years. It's gonna, or 100 years. Like, it'll be like, Trump, oh no, we gotta, they gotta go to jail. We gotta bring them up on war crimes, that kind of a thing. And so I think he realizes he needs to win decisively, or, it's problems for his whole bloodline.
I think that that is one perspective. I I think that the regime, whether or not it's true, the regime is doing a very good job showing him, or convincing him, that that's not going to happen. I think that you see, even he got a little squirrely on the, like, illegal immigrants at the farms thing. He was kind of like, "Oh, we're going to make sure the farmers don't have to deal with deportations." Like, I feel like they're back channeling pretty effectively with him to make it seem like, "Oh, we're playing ball now. We're reasonable. We get it. We get that something was wrong." I feel like that's kind of like what they're doing. Whether or not they're going to stick with that, you may be totally right that that's total bullshit. And as soon as they get their finger on the button, they're going to just go totally crazy. I could see that. I mean, it's tough to predict, sort of. Um, Man, what a situation! What a situation we're in, and it's really like, it was an invasion. It is an invasion. It really is an invasion. It's just this weird, soft, voluntary invasion that somehow normal people have been brainwashed into not seeing with their eyes. I mean, it's such an odd phenomenon, and it's so great that you've basically committed your life to covering this. So what does Border Hawk offer that, like, Fox can't? Because you guys they don't have people on the ground. You guys have people actually on the ground, right?
They did actually. They had a great reporter. They have a great reporter named Bill Malugin. I think that he actually did some of the best work on the border. He was an outlier, though. They would send Griff Jenkins down there, Matt Finn. I think in some ways Fox has come a long way on the immigration issue, in large part thanks to Bill Malugin for the work that he did, because it ended up being so popular. And they probably realized the American people were like, "This is the issue," and they're like, okay, we'll respond to the market. They have an immigration section on the Fox News website now, and they do great reporting on immigration issues. How long they'll do that for remains to be seen. But we are the only ones focused strictly on these issues. We are just hammering at this specific issue, immigration and border, every day, all day. And of course, there's room for other people to do it, but we're the only ones that are doing it like this. We're the only news outlet that I'm aware of that is strictly dedicated to this issue. There are other news outlets that have a little wing dedicated to it, and that should be the case. We welcome everyone getting in on this, because we're not trying to, like, be the only ones, because this issue it just goes so far, so it penetrates every facet of society, and there are so many different groups now. We were talking about this last night in a space, that are like focusing on one particular issue, whether it's like STEM jobs or H-1B stuff, or American Truckers United focusing specifically on the trucking situation as it, intersects with immigration. And there's room for people to be doing that all over the place. We're highlighting their work. And we're just trying to, stay on top of all these different issues, these different stories, and cast a wide net as best we can. And one of the things that we do best is we report on illegal alien crime. And there are very few people that actually do that, and that do that consistently. There are a few big social media accounts that are doing that. And those types of stories get huge amount of traction, because these are things that are affecting American people at the ground level. They're seeing that their communities, even in rural parts of the country that previously had no such exposure to illegal alien crime, are being rocked by these crimes. And so I think that's one of the intersection of immigration and crime, I think, is the issue for many people in Europe And the United States, because it's real, it's right there in their faces. They're wondering what kind of world their grandchildren or children are going to grow up in when we have more and more illegal alien criminals on the streets and criminals in general. And so that's something that we really focus on, also to honor the victims themselves, because many of these victims, they never get their day in court. They never get any recognition. Their names are hardly ever spoken. They never get the treatment of a St. George Floyd, even when the most heinous crimes are committed against them and their families by people who should never be in this country in the first place. You had that terrible accident in Florida this weekend that everyone's been talking about with the illegal alien truck driver. This is happening every day, all across the country. And that's one of the things that I think that we do best. And also, we tell it like it is. We don't use the term migrants unless it really applies. We use the term illegal aliens. We use the term invaders at times. We really try to cut to the heart of the issue with no fluff language like other outlets would use undocumented, immigrant or whatever. Like we try to tell it as real as it is and hit it hard. And I think that the American people are responding to that because our following and our readership just continues to grow. And I have to say, thanks to you guys at Will, the branding is so beautiful now. It looks so pro. It was all over Fox News last weekend. It just looked so good. It looked better than theirs. And the new website looks great, borderhawk.news. So we are very grateful to you guys at Will for taking us to the next level in that regard.
No worries, man. Well, it's a tiny peppercorn given what you guys are actually doing. And it's unbelievable to me that you're the only outfit that is covering the most important issue of our time by far. It's just astounding to me. It's astounding to me that because of course the liberals are totally compromised. So they can't actually cover the issue. That's obviously the most important issue. So you're definitely doing God's work. Okay, final question, then I'll get you out of here. Somebody says, "What did you think of the O'Keefe documentary?"
I'll tread lightly with that one. We were invited to participate in that one in a very big way. And we just decided it wasn't for us. It was going to be a huge commitment, stationing someone in Texas or on the border for a long period of time. We served as behind the scenes consultants for that. I don't know if we got any recognition. We might have, might be in the credits, but we decided to keep that one a little bit at arm's distance for a variety of reasons. There has been a lot of controversy since it came out with some of the people that participated in the film, and we just try to stay out of drama. But we do appreciate all the work that James has done and that documentary in terms of highlighting, especially the child trafficking issues, which is, perhaps the most heinous aspect of the invasion of them all, I would say. And so
wow.
we do salute him for his work. We did participate behind the scenes. We chose to keep our entity separate from that entity, though.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the child trafficking thing is insane. It really is wild. That's another whole part of this that we didn't even discuss. But okay, thank you so much, man. This was really great. Appreciate your time, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon, Dan. I'll put all the links in the episode.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you for everything you
Please.
guys do. Cheers.
For sure. Bye.